Now, let's get to the exciting stuff. South Australia for the win. Who is a proud South Australian today? Love to hear from you in the comments. I'm sure it was an amazing moment just to see Labor actually get there and feel that moment. I know that they were tipped to win, but I always have my doubts because the LNP are so super sneaky. So, I want to talk about that win and so much more. I hope you're in for a fun couple of hours. And I'm hoping anyone from South Australia give me a bit of a feel of how they're feeling today, because I'm sure that there would be euphoria everywhere. A very good, stable government brought in. The LNP can try and coin the phrase, but we freaking own it. We own it. I can tell you, the moment I heard it was like, woohoo! Yes, I get excited, overexcited over things that I know. I'm not even in South Australia, and I was like, yes, best day ever. So, let's start us off. So, in lieu of talking about how we want to deal in South Australia, I think it's important to note that no election is guaranteed. You still have to run a really, really good election. Even if we have the stance that, hey, that's always been a rather red-leaning state, and that, you know, this is just returning to its roots kind of thing, which is part of the sentiment that the LNP is running. But really, this is pretty unprecedented what happened here. The LNP barely got a term in, and then they were unceremoniously chucked out. And it looks like, by the numbers, looking at the SA win, it looks like what happened there happened in South Australia. It just obliterated the Liberals. And you can't tell me that the federal election looming hasn't played a role in this. I absolutely think it does. But let's start off with everything that we've got. Unfortunately, you've just got me tonight. Every once in a while I am lucky enough to get people up here, but not tonight. So, I think we can safely start off with, so the South Australian win is pretty amazing, but I think it shocked us all just how big it got. And congratulations to, I want to pronounce it correctly, Peter Menakewis. Okay, that last name is amazing, and I need to learn how to pronounce that, because I want to promote people that are going to do amazing work. I regularly promote Mark McGowan and Anastasia Palaszczuk, Danny Andrews. A lot of people have really, really made sure that went off super well. So can I truly say congratulations to Peter and the Labor team who got in, and thank you to South Australia for making the rest of Australia breathe a sigh of relief in watching how that went down. Okay, so Scott Morrison dismissed state and federal comparison, saying Anthony Albanese is not Peter Menakewis. I cannot pronounce that. There we go. Scott Morrison is clearly trying to run scared. And I mean, I think it was obvious that he was always going to be a little bit frightened of what this would mean, even if he knew that it was just returning to, if you will, a Labor safe haven. This does spell bad news to Scott Morrison, even if he wants to paint it as not. The South Australian election result should have Scott Morrison trembling ahead of the federal poll, says Labor, after Peter became the first opposition leader to defeat an incumbent government since the start of the pandemic. That's bloody telling. South Australia did do pretty well in its handling of COVID, even underneath the Liberals. I can't attack Stephen Marshall. They relatively well stuck to what Dan Andrews was doing, and they did have a regular set of meetings to do with that. And this is telling. Do not underpin how serious this was. The Liberal Party barely got a whimpering of a term. The outgoing Premier, Stephen Marshall, announced on Sunday he would step down as leader after the landslide loss to Labor, saying he takes full responsibility for the result and accepts the will of the people. This was a standard concession speech. So if you haven't heard one of these, this is generally what they do. They write a winning speech and a concession speech. Sounds weird, but not really. Unless you're Trump and he didn't think he'd lose, so he just didn't write anything at all. Someone forgot his colouring book. The Prime Minister sought to downplay what resounding Labor win in South Australia could mean on a federal level, saying Anthony Albanese doesn't match up to his state colleagues. See, this is how you know Scott Morrison is a little bit afraid of this, because when you have a look, he tries to put himself in a position where no, Albo can't do this. Remember, Albo and Scott Morrison right now are neck and neck. This is going to be the moment where we all go, oh, yes, it's possible. And with enough sharing of information, not only is this possible, it never should be doubted. Albo's got this. We just have to rally around him and tell people, nah, we're not putting up with SCOMO's crap anymore. He's on track to win 26 seats in South Australia, 47-seat parliament, after Labor picked up a 7% swing against the first-term Marshall government in Saturday's election. I've never quite understood what the swings mean. I have asked, did ask Anthony Green about the swings, and I kind of am trying to get the lingo of how the swing works and where it actually comes from. And I'm hoping that means get rid of Scott Morrison. I would like him to just go. Leave Parliament, done. I do not see him having any longevity in politics once it's over. He just doesn't strike me as a man that can maintain the facade once the shit show's over. I don't know how other people feel. Okay. Labor ran campaign heavily focused on state issues like health and problems around ambulances ramping at hospitals. So what that basically means is when they go to the hospital, they weren't actually able to get the ambulance officers weren't able to get the patients into the hospital because there weren't enough beds and there weren't enough staff. Now this is how every Conservative runs. For some reason, they do this weird thing where they look at the public sectors like health and they go, well, why would you need something like that? And they're like the staple part of what they do. They gut them. Which is weird that they ever win elections given that they gut health so badly. Take a look at Tasmania. I think that's a very evident moment where I just don't see how that's even possible, because their health system has gotten so bad. it's almost unthinkable at how disgraceful to watch their health system slip. And then when you're talking about it in the midst of a pandemic, it becomes really mentally part of this thing where you're like, I just won't go there. And then more deaths increase as this starts happening, and wait times become longer. Labor's national president, Wayne Swan, said Peter's win was a clear message about voters, that the voters have had enough of Liberal governments and are out of touch with their lives. Absolutely. This is now time to concede that the LNP do not have a plan for our health and safety systems at all. This isn't like a small thing that I would be pinning slightly on. Scott Morrison has fundamentally taken Medicare, NDIS, and many other wonderful programs and smashed it, which is why what happened in South Australia matters so much. Because what was their key platform? Health and education and other things like that. Things that people really want to see. And the fact that they still go to elections and go, oh, we're just going to gut that. It's weird that they've ever won. I don't know how a Conservative ever gets elected knowing that's their like key platform. If you haven't noticed, it's kind of like a staple food for them. Like, we'll lower your taxes, but in return, don't die or don't go to hospital. Don't be near death and don't go to hospital, because we've lowered your taxes so much that the hospital is dying all around us. That's how it kind of works. Which I don't know why anyone would vote for that. It's so bizarre. This was not just about rejecting Stephen Marshall's government. It was a rejection of the Liberal brand, Wayne Swan said on Sunday. Federal leaders did not play a big role in the South Australian election, while Anthony Albanese made several campaign visits, including for infrastructure announcement. Morrison did not campaign for the Liberals in the state. Now, that part's important. Now, why would I mention that part? Scott Morrison is largely on the nose around the nation, not just sort of here or there. We're talking countrywide. It's a little bit of a shit show. So thinking about it on this front, right? It's not that Scott Morrison didn't want more photo ops. It's that Stephen Marshall was like, no thank you, you're pretty toxic, dude, I'm out. That's how this thing kind of come out. And that's really important, because what's about to happen next is going to be quite shocking. But Swan said the SA results should have Morrison's MPs trembling. Speaking in Sydney on Sunday, Morrison paid tribute to Marshall government but shrugged off any suggestion the Liberal loss would have implications for the federal election due in May. Now, yeah, I'd assume that he did. I'd assume Marshall did say, hey, buddy, that you can play photo op guy all around the country, just not here. I remember that this sort of became one of the big famous things of Tony Abbott. He was going around spruiking this idea that he had this great relationship with women, and he was standing with one of the MPs, like I think a woman MP, and he started saying something like, women will be happy when the carbon tax is gone because they do most of the ironing. And he was like at some weird place. And there were several elections that took up after that, and everyone was like, we don't want him anywhere near us, please don't invite him. That's when I really got a sense that the Liberals weren't likeable, even by their own people. Back when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister, if you haven't gotten to the point where even your own people are saying, hey, yeah, please don't turn up here. It's not going to go down well for you. Yeah, he's, I don't know what he thinks he's doing in WA. He is not liked. The fact that Scott Morrison jumped on this bandwagon with Clive Palmer has not gone down well with Western Australians. He played politics in the middle of a pandemic. That's pretty bad form. So watch this space. People are pissed with him in South Australia. This election is being fought on state issues. The federal election will be fought on federal issues, he said. See, this is a way of Scott Morrison saying, could you imagine if Stephen Marshall won? Yeah, Malcolm Turnbull was very hated by his own. He was considered like a, if I remember, they were trying to imply that he belonged to the left. And I remember this weird campaign that they were sort of rallying behind, you know, toppling Malcolm Turnbull. There was a lot of inside sources going, I'm sure he's secretly a leader for the Labor Party. And I was like, that's weird. Why would you even suggest such a thing? They're like, no, we're pretty sure he's left-leaning. And I'm like, I don't know, but that's a weird thing to topple him on. His polling, it wasn't too bad at the time. They're like, no, he's got to go. And that was the sort of overarching message I got with the Turnbull government. With Scott Morrison, that has a completely different feel. It's the house is on fire, everyone has to leave, and Scott Morrison has essentially embarrassed everyone in government. So if you hear from different premiers, like that was Gladys Berejiklian calling him a psycho, yeah, Turnbull was considered more green, which is what they thought was more left-leaning. And with Scott Morrison, they kind of look at him and go, oh, this is really different, because he kind of sets little fires off along the way. For instance, when the floods happened in northern New South Wales, the Nationals person stepped down because they were like, I can't be attached to this. This is so bad that the Prime Minister wouldn't act, that they actually resigned, and they realised this was untenable. Because Scott Morrison plays politics, yeah, he has embarrassed himself worldwide, Scott Morrison has. The part where you take a look at what Scott Morrison has done, fundamentally around the country, you're watching these like tiny fires. And when you see him, the people around him are like, don't mention this, don't mention that. But somehow he steps right into it and then goes, no, I'll just do another photo and that'll cover for the rest. And it doesn't. It falls flat. And there's absolutely nothing that can be done once he falls flat. That's it. It's over. Finito. And each and every time he'll do something even more offensive to ramp it up. But it got even more offensive with Scott Morrison this week, because Morrison admitted that his party would look carefully at the tactics that were employed in his campaign. Now, that first line, I need you to drink in. Morrison admitted that his party will look carefully at the tactics that were employed in that campaign. So Stephen Marshall didn't do the typical Liberal smear thing. He did a bit of it, but by and large it was a pretty clean run. Yeah, Scott Morrison is definitely fundamentally inadequate, and that's part of where we're at. That's what I'm building to. Why South Australia's moment was so damn important, because this was the moment where we could all see, for everyone, that he's watching, and if he didn't think his party wasn't tied to that shit show for his federal election, why would he change? Why would he look at the strategy? See, he has to win support in South Australia. How does he do that? And then claim, no, it has nothing, the two are not joined. No, you can't, buddy. Yeah, you're all out of options on this. It's either you're all in or you're not. And I honestly believe Scott Morrison doesn't have the cojones to just admit and say, hey, we've been running a pretty awful campaign at this point, and let's turn it around. Because he's still doing the weird photo ops, and he's still making these really bizarre speeches. A sentiment echoed by Finance Minister and South Australian Senator Simon Birmingham. In an interview on the ABC Insiders program, he said South Australia's campaign had many misleading aspects. What? And alleged that it could be replicated in the federal election. Now, here's how the LNP work. If you're not familiar with their moment of I'm dobbing on myself, that's one of them. That's like 5 alarms go off. Why? Here's what the Liberals do. They always dob on themselves. They cannot help it. They are fundamentally built to accidentally say what the real plan is. Yeah. They run absolute shit shows of misleading campaigns. Do not be underneath the guise of thinking, hey, they're going to be, yeah, just another deflection. That's part of my issue with what happened here. It's not really saying anything about what happened in South Australia. This is more saying to what's going to happen in the federal election. This is what I've always said. No one makes a great liar, because they always end up dobbing on themselves. That's why it's always good to tell the truth from the start, because eventually the truth is going to come out, even if you don't like it. And I think that that's what Simon Birmingham did. He dobbed on himself. That again reminds us all that we can't underscore the potential for Labor to run these types of scare campaigns, just like they did with Mediscare. See, now he's going to make something up, and he's going to say Labor wasn't correct about the cuts to Medicare. Dude, they did it. They did everything Labor said that they would do. That's what makes this such a dishonest campaign that the Liberals run. And particularly when they can roll up public sector unions devastating efforts. See, that to me is a sign that the IPA doesn't have the hold that the unions do. The IPA has never been popular with anybody, unless you're like megally rich. Do you ever hear anyone go, oh no, I'm a member of the IPA? But most people say, no, I support my union. So it's kind of like that harken back to, well, I've got to attack the thing that I think is working in their favour. This is definitely the Liberal tactic here. Do not be misunderstood on what this means, that they know that the union movement is powerful and it's palliative. That's the LNP's favourite thing, record all good things Labor do. For instance, the NBN could have been the world-leading amazingness that it should have been. Same as the NDIS. These were things that had deliberate money set aside. These were all fundamentally paid for. These were all costed. They didn't need to be screwed up this badly. But they took wonderful programs like NDIS and NBN. Yeah, See, this is super important. Unions don't just represent the people's voice. They're you. They are you. They are everyday mum and dads that are just joining their union because they've fought for them in one case or another. Now, not every union is going to be perfect. But let me tell you this. I've never heard of the IPA even getting close. I've never heard a feel-good story about the IPA. That's devastating for the LNP. So you can hear their weakness. Their weakness is this. And when they're talking, the IPA is built on those lobbyists. So each time you're seeing these lobbyists rolled out, and that's what you're seeing. And their messaging, if you have a look at their 10-point plan, there's nothing good in it. I invite anyone to just quickly Google the IPA's 10-point plan. Have a look at the one from Sally McManus with the union head. Hers are all like structured and have all these great working rights and formulated plans and, you know, a way to bring the country to a better, cleaner energy sector and all that kind of great stuff. The IPA is like, nope, no ABC. Nope, let's just privatize everything. That's the two positions are so far apart, and this is why I've never, ever, ever had anyone walk up to me and go, no, I'm a legitimate member of the IPA. That's what makes Labor so real. That's their roots. So understand as we're having these discussions where Labor comes from. Labor is targeting the SA seat of Boothby at the federal election, held in the retiring LNP Nicole Flint. Labor Senate leader Penny Wong called Saturday a positive result for the party. Now, if you have a look, Labor realises this is like strike while the iron's hot. Have a look at Albo and how confident he sounds now that he's seen this. This almost like got that moment where you could almost see Albo go, no, this is real. And it's turned into, and you should feel good about this too, the IPA only represents a reach. Exactly. I haven't seen anything in their 10-point plan that will benefit you. I think that we need to spend time dissecting the difference between the IPA and the union, the head of the unions. Why? Because I think that shows whenever the rhetoric comes up, oh, they're both the same sort of party. That couldn't be furthest from the truth. And I think that you can see it fundamentally when you start talking about the difference in the IPA and the unions. They're two totally different institutes. One is for the people, the unions. The other one is fundamentally rotted to the core of major big rich people, lobbyists that are from the big business sector. Look, I'm not against big business, but what I am against is pitting big business against small business. And that seems to be the fundamental role of the IPA, because I do think the mum and dad jobs of the country are bigger than any business that we can throw at them. And we've shown that time and time again. Through this pandemic, I think that was evident that even some of the mum and dad businesses that survived, the first people that cried wolf was the big business. So you tell me who was stronger. Absolutely. It was one each and every day. The family mum and dad business. They barely complained. You didn't hear from them. They were just trying to stay open and keep their doors open. Even when they were told not to, they were like, Okay, I'm going to build an online website. That's how I'm going to do this now. But a lot of businesses suffered as a result, and they didn't get the support, financial support they needed to survive this. And that showed you where the LNP's feeling was about business. When they're handing out all this money to big business and they were like to littler business, oh, sorry, we'll catch you next time. And then they cut off all the support way too soon. So fundamentally, this is why I think the South Australian win was so big, because it really comes back to what are the core values. Peter ran on all the things that we know Albo is running on. So watch this space. Look at how popular he got through sticking to it. I think Australians are looking for a leader who looks to the future, which is what Anthony Albanese is so clearly saying. She told Channel 9. That's what Penny Wong said. It is Scott Morrison to drag the Liberals vote here. It is positive, but we've got a long way to go when it comes to the seats here in South Australia. We know it is going to be a really tough fight. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Do not be underneath the presumption that Albo can walk into the lodge. This language needs to be set in stone. Do not think we are going to walk away from this one and done. We have a lower house to get, an upper house, the Senate, and we've got to get rid of that Prime Minister. It has to be on all three levels. We cannot let this be and then go state by state by state. New South Wales and Tasmania, I'm coming for you. I'm not afraid to say the thing, like friendly Geordies. It has got this attitude of, no, we're not playing nice with you. I'm not playing nice with you. I'm not done thinking that that's how I'm going to get over this. Okay. Albanese did not make a public remark on Sunday night, but tweeted his congratulations to Peter on Saturday night, saying South Australians have backed your vision for a stronger future. The win for the first time since the pandemic that an incumbent government... See, this essentially what was supposed to happen, because South Australia really didn't bungle the pandemic handling. That's why there was so much trepidation in saying, hey, Labor can get back in. That's important. The reason that they held back in doing that is because, by and large, I have to say, Stephen Marshall followed Dan Andrews. And it was a winner for him. But not on election night. It definitely wasn't. I know, what I know is that, oh, hold on. It's a win for the, when asked about this, Morrison tried to draw a distinction between Albanese and other successful Labor state premiers. What I know is that Anthony Albanese is not Peter. He's not any of their other premiers. He's not any, see, but here's the thing. When it suits it, Scott Morrison, he will link the two. But when something good happens, no. Why would you attach the two? That's a very scared man telling you a tale. Do not be underneath the presumption that we haven't noticed what Scott Morrison did. When he attacked Anastasia Palaszczuk and Dan Andrews, he was equally attacking Anthony Albanese. Don't take my word for it. Take theirs. Go back, roll the tape. That's how they handled this shit show. This wasn't just one or two stuff-ups. This was fundamentally a cascading amount. There is a big difference between Anthony Albanese and the federal leader on what we see in performance from his state colleagues. Morrison said, yeah, how? Albo's running on the same deal. So I would invite Scott Morrison to actually draw a distinction. Not just say, hey, no, they're not the same. See, that's the thing. He brought up burden of proof. Now, I put a challenge to the Prime Minister. Burden of proof, buddy. Either you have it or you don't. And I think that that's where it should be. He needs to be honest about that. And that is where we're at. Okay. He said Marshall, who described as a good friend, has done great as Premier. And he looked forward to working with Peter. Scott Morrison isn't going to work with him. He couldn't even work to fix northern New South Wales. And that's a Liberal state. No. In announcing his decision to step down as Liberal leader on Sunday, oh God, he's gone. He said he would continue to serve the people in the electorate of Dunstan and that he was proud of his government's achievement. His highlights are the abolishment of the payroll tax for small businesses and the lowering of household costs. I don't think he lowered anyone's household costs. We face the extraordinary times through natural disasters, global pandemic, and maintaining to keep South Australians safe with fewer restrictions than almost anywhere else in the world. No, that's not true either. We all as a nation did take this hard stance in the beginning against this thing. We just didn't think we should be messing with it. Told his press conference that he was not going to be that he was not going to be SCOMO's quokka. Jeez. If they do something I don't agree with, I will stand and fight for our interest, he said. That is going to be an interesting thing to watch. Watch this space. Because now we have more premiers that are Labor and more to come after the Prime Minister. So let's pressure our premiers in the ramping up of this election to go after Scott Morrison. And then we'll get Anthony Albanese to home and hosey. And the people. I have a plan. The plan is to tell each Labor Premier it's time to go after Scott Morrison and it's time to make the headlines flip. Because he shouldn't be allowed to keep doing this. So, just who did South Australia elect? Well, he's a very interesting character. Everything I've read about him is fundamentally someone I can truly say he's worked. He's really done a hard day's work. I've pushed trolleys. I've been a cleaner. I now mow lawns. So I get where this man's coming from. Every day was a damn struggle. So he started his working life as a trolley boy for Woolworths at age 15 before being promoted to the checkout. He became a union official for the Shop Distributive Allied Employees Association before entering Parliament in the Upper House in 2015. He quickly rose to prominence, becoming Minister for Police and Minister for Health in his first term. He ran as the change candidate to focus heavily on healthcare. He promised 300 hospital beds in the state. That's huge. That's really big. So he also pledged to bring back the Adelaide 500 motorsport to the event. Peter also is aligned with the Labor right faction and has described himself as socially conservative. Well, that's going to be an interesting watch if that's true. But I do congratulate the South Australian Labor Party for that win. So there's another thing I want to talk about. The part that I want to talk about is super important, and it's going to come up. The LNP takeover of the New South Wales Liberals. So federally, you have, while what happened in South Australia happened, you have this hostile takeover in New South Wales. And I want to point out why that's important, because it's a sign that the Liberal Party are getting afraid, and they want to put their own people in there, and that's getting a little bit scary. So the Liberal Party's infighting over pre-selecting federal candidates is heading back to the Supreme Court. After the member of the state executive began fresh legal action on Tuesday, challenging the federal party's intervention to save 2 ministers and a sitting MP. Now that's going to come up big. We are looking at some big issues. With this effectively means that the Liberals want to do the takeover, and they're gonna. I think that this sets a precedence for what will happen nationwide as the election gets closer. Member for the New South Wales State Executive, Matthew Camaluzzi, had filed with the Supreme Court challenge to an endorsement of the sitting MPs, which was achieved last week by a brief takeover of the troubled New South Wales branch by a special committee appointment. The new legal action, one sec, I just got to make sure this is up where I want it. Okay. Why don't I see it? There we go. Just 1 second. This is because something went very, very crazy. And I can't see anything popping up. Okay. The new legal action. See, here's the thing. If they do what they're doing, right, we're in really big trouble, because the federal LNP will eventually roll into the New South Wales branch. This means that they're no longer electing their own people to sit in these seats. These are Scott Morrison's handpicks. Let him go for broke doing this. This won't go well. I've not seen this go well anywhere, because now you even have the state LNP attacking the federal LNP, which you're barely getting in the headlines. That's super important. The new legal action confirmed by the executive of the Liberal Party and sets the scenes for further public stoushes. But we're not going to hear about it. I thought I was sharing the screen, and I was not. Which is going to be interesting. This is going to set it all up like this. A 3-person committee acting on behalf of the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, took over the New South Wales branch for 72 hours last week and endorsed the Immigration Minister and member for Mitchell, Alex Hawke, to the Environment Minister, MP Farah Susan Lee, and MP for North Sydney, Trent Zimmerman, who is a key figure in the moderate faction. This is going to go south pretty quickly. But I don't see too many headlines grabbing this just yet. But as the election gets closer and these court appearances keep coming, it's going to get pretty hard to hide these proceedings, and it's going to get real bad real quick. All three had been facing challenges of pre-selection in the case of Lee. She's also likely to lose her seat in a conservative right-winger Christian Ellis if a branch vote was held. The other two MPs face an uncertain outcome. Morrison has made it clear he wants his minister Zimmerman to run again. The brief takeover was deemed necessary by the federal executive after months of delays within the New South Wales branch. See, they're ramping this up. This is the plan. The way I'm seeing it is like the tent collapsing in on itself. This won't just kill off what happens with New South Wales LNP. This will have a resounding effect on the federal LNP. So around that time after that, I think it's 2023, the New South Wales will go to the polls as well. That's what I'm wanting to point out. Under changes in New South Wales Liberal Party constitution introduced in 2018, championed by former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, the New South Wales Party was supposed to allow branch members a much bigger say in the candidate selection via branch plebiscites. Now, they also do the same thing with women. They have this thing where they sort of wheel them out. And it's a massive boys' club, and they do have an issue with doing this. Do not be fooled into thinking that this is just a small thing. Instead of a factional warlords of the party have attempted to delay the process. There was a 9-month delay in vetting possible candidates, and they've both been instead attempting to carve up the winnable seats. But this too has stalled. The rules require a 90% vote to overrule the Constitution and install candidates administratively. But weeks into the federal election in May, the Liberal Party is without candidates in Warringah, Hughes, Eden, Monaro and Parramatta. The New South Wales division appeared to be edging towards holding plebiscites to choose candidates in that seat. But time is running out for the federal executives again to intervene. That is going to be where we're at. Not only are they running out of time, but they don't have a plan. I always think of the Liberal Party as this cunning party. It's not. It's not a genius brain at all. What it is a very skilled newspaper that also says a lot of dumb things, but has a mass buy-up all around the country, which we're going to talk about later, backs them. And that's how they really get over. So we need to make social media bigger than that. We need to make it bigger than anything that they've ever seen, so they can't dispute it anymore. So I think that part's important. But I want to talk about a scandal in South Australia. So, hold on. This is going to be a huge thing. And I think that it was kept relatively quiet given Murdoch isn't great at telling a good story anyway. But check this out. So what had happened was it turned into Liberal MP Troy Bell hit out at the Premier Stephen Marshall days ahead of the SA election. Why? Because he turned himself into a Liberal. He's a Liberal and now has turned himself into an independent. Why would you do that? For several reasons. One of them is to do this. A Liberal Party turned independent, Tony Bell, has planned to pen a scathing letter to his former party days from the election in South Australia to guarantee the support of the event of a hung parliament, and telling the Premier Stephen Marshall the clock is ticking to match Labor's spending in his seat. Mount Gambier MP also accused the Premier of having underestimated his intelligence if Mr Marshall is counting on his backing if no clear winner emerged from the poll. Mr Bell, who was elected in Mount Gambier in 2014, resigned from the Liberal Party. Now have a look at why he resigned. After being charged with stealing a substantial amount of taxpayers' money, but retained his seat as an independent in the 2018 election. That part's important. That part is going to come up. So what he did was, he stole taxpayers' money, and to deflect, he went with, I'll attack Stephen Marshall, and not only will I do that, but I'll run as an independent to make it look like I'm fighting for you as an independent and no longer as a Liberal. This is not a new strategy, but what makes it amazing, I don't know whether this dude won his seat in the recent state election, but it'll be interesting to see how this one came out in the wash. He pleaded not guilty to misappropriating $2 million in public funds while working as an independent learning centre before he entered Parliament, and last-ditch attempt to stop the matter going to trial before the High Court. So essentially, he used a strategy of, hey, I'm a parliamentarian, let's keep this hush-hush. And then he went from, I'm a Liberal parliamentarian, to, I don't want to attach myself to Stephen Marshall now, to, I'm going to attack Stephen Marshall to take the headline away from the impending charges. That's where we find ourselves with this gentleman. The Mount Gambier MP is also seeking to defend separate charges of more than $54,000 a claim in false taxpayer-funded accommodation allowance paid to country MPs. Now, he was not the only one to pull a stunt like this in South Australia. This is the other reason that Labor did get what they got in South Australia. That party essentially was riddled with this sort of stuff. And this is a big deal. Do not underpin how serious this thing is. In what Mr. Bell described as an open note for his former colleagues, he accused the government of committing a paltry $2.7 million in his seat compared to the Labor committing $100 million. If you think $2.7 million in an election commitment is going to cut it for the state's second largest city, and I think you've underestimated the intelligence of my community. That is going to come up. So that's how he's playing it. But let's have a deeper look at what he is. This is why I wanted to talk about this. So he's not just being charged a little, he's being charged with a lot of stuff. If you ask me, if you're being charged with 52 offences, it's a rather large docket. It's unusual and it screams problematic for the Liberals. So, South Australian Independent used to be a Liberal. See how they've already written it up? Like they just give it to him that he is now an independent. I tell you now, if a Labor person was facing 52 counts, 50 offences that appeared to relate to a scandal, and they just decided, hey, I'm going to be an independent, you know what the first thing that a headline would say? Former Labor person had this happening. But when a Liberal does it, it's no, he's an independent and not linked to Liberals at all. That language is so darn important because he committed the offences while being a Liberal. Mr. Bell confirmed to ABC that he was facing 52 charges and that he would defend the allegations to the fullest extent. The member for Mount Gambier said he cooperated with investigations into the country members' accommodation allowance and had done so knowing that I have always acted honestly. Well, clearly not. This is, while we always go with the presumption of innocence, the DPP is rarely going to come at you with 52 counts if they're umming and ahhing about the severity of your crime and how much evidence they got. The DPP does not operate that way. Department of Public Prosecutions is a very cautious being. It does not at all operate like this. The country members' accommodation allowance is a nightly payment made to regional MPs who need to be in the city. The usual place of residence is more than 75 kilometres from Adelaide. More than 100,000 of incorrect question claims made for country members' accommodation allowance has been identified since the ABC investigated them for it last year. So he did arrange an agreement to pay back 42,000 of it, right? From the SA Parliament in 2014. At the time, he did not explain why he was making the repayment, other than to say it was being done out of an abundance of caution. First-term Liberal backbencher Fraser Ellis repaid 42,000 before an investigation by the Independent Commission against corruption resulted in criminal charges against him. So now we're seeing this become the theme. You're not a Liberal unless you've done something this, don't you? In a response to questions from the ABC about what charges related to Mr. Bell, and he was aware of similar allegations have been levelled against another of other country MPs, to whom have since admitted to incorrectly claiming the travel allowance. This stuff isn't hard. Why? You make enough money to even just get a tiny apartment in these areas. I don't know why they haven't done that, but albeit for me to point out the frickin' obvious here. It is not immediately clear why the decision has been made to criminally charge me and not others, while the authorities have waited until now to serve their charges upon me. Now that comment's important, because what he's saying is, hey, they're coming after me and they didn't show discretion. What he wanted was special treatment. No, buddy, that's not how this works. You do not get special treatment for being a criminal. No one should. There shouldn't be this trepidation to announce something like this in relation to this sort of stuff. He wants special treatment. And that's all the Liberals want. They want this special treatment that is awarded to no one else. No one else has this. Don't take my word for it. Take theirs. When they're making ridiculous statements like, they waited until now. As if there's like this special timing of the DPP. Like the DPP definitely had it in for him. Well, dude, if you weren't a little criminal, maybe they wouldn't be filing charges. An alleged little criminal. That's what makes this part interesting. My community remains in the grip of major public health crisis, and there are only 3 months away from an election. See, that's what he was scared about. He's like, no, we're getting this close to an election. And he did this in 2014. And it took time to investigate. So they were supposed to go, no. You should get re-elected before anyone knows what you did. Buddy, that's not how any of this works, and nor should it. And I'm repulsed by the idea that you think the DPP should work in your favour. In fact, Mr. Bell, I challenge you to find any DPP that should be that kind to you when anyone else around the country, regardless of status, would be told, being criminal doesn't mean that we just stop and pause everything we're doing because you're a powerful fellow. Why would you think justice works like that? You're clearly claiming that there is a two-tiered justice system. That's disgusting on numerous levels. Okay, I remain strongly committed to my community. They are my sole priority. The time focus needs to be how I can contribute to support them. I have every intention of standing at the 2022 election as a state representative. Okay, the last year ministers Tim Whitstone, Stephen Knoll resigned from the cabinet after paying more than $30,000 between them. So they were already like scurrying like rats. They knew what they were doing. This wasn't just one doing it. This was three. And they were like, we better leave now. Instead of trying to run an election around and trying to hide that you did crimey things and wanting the DPP to hold off talking about that, how about you not run while you got something like that going on? It's an incredible thing to do. If Labor was to stand there and then go, no, I'm just going to go over the line, Murdoch would murder their career. Murder it. And that's how he does it. He's so... Look at this. There's more. Long-serving Liberals Terry Stevenson and Adrian Petrick also resigned from their positions at the Legislative Council President and Government Whip after questions were raised about their claims to the allowance. Now we're at number 5. So now we have 5. Playing along yet? That's part of where we're at. We're now at number 5. That's super interesting. And he's still stuck in for the muck of this. And he thought that the DPP should just go, sorry, sir, we're just going to wait until we're through an election to talk about your crimey business. Why would the DPP ever suggest putting off a criminal investigation because you did something crimey? There's no two-tier justice system that should ever function this way. We're talking about 52 counts of a criminal nature. And the fact that 5 in total have had their name associated with this exact same role. That should scare you. This is why I think the South Australian LNP was on the nose. This here is an indication that why they only got 1 term. Because they weren't responsible. They weren't willing to do the work to be responsible. And this stuff isn't new. This is how all the Liberals operate. Watch what happens if there's a retrospective ICAC if Albo gets in. Watch them all pretend like their hands weren't all over this crap. That'll be an interesting one to watch. The ABC investigation into the allowance revealed that Mr. Bell was staying rent-free at Mr. Stevens' Norwood home while attending parliamentary sittings. So, what did Mr. Bell do? Mr. Bell claimed an allowance for staying away from home. Do you know what he did equally to that? He stayed at a mate's place free. Just absorb the type of selfishness that is. He's like, the taxpayer shouldn't just pay for me to stay somewhere, but I'm going to stay somewhere else, and it'll be with a buddy, and it'll be free, and I'm still going to charge a taxpayer for it. There are 52 counts associated with what he did. That's astounding that they thought, no, We'll just walk through it, and the DPP should just put off talking about it. Nah, sorry, you don't get to have this kind of crap go on. The new charges do not relate to an ongoing long-running theft case, which saw Mr. Bell resign in the Liberal Party in 2017 after being charged with theft and dishonesty in dealing with documents. And he was like, no, DPP, you shouldn't have announced anything. And now it looks like he stole off his own party. Like, this is the cut. And then he's like, no, but I've got to come after Stephen Marshall too. And then you'll almost look at him and go, the boldness of what you do, there's no limit to how ridiculous that looks. That looks ridiculous. So he stole from the party in 2017. Then he went on to claim this ridiculous expense, along with 4 others. And then he got charged with theft and dishonesty in dealing with documents in his own party. And then he's like, no, I will attack Stephen Marshall. Okay, dude. Those resulted from ICAC investigation into Mr. Bell's work, running as an independent leaning centre for Mount Gambier before he was first elected. So before he was elected, right? Let's absorb what they're saying. So before he was elected, Stephen Marshall let him run with this kind of history. Sure, why not? Bit weird? I think so. The matter was due to go to trial next February, but the matter has since been delayed until October, while Mr. Bell seeks to appeal the matter in High Court. Now, you have to wonder who is paying for that shit show. I tell you now, you're on the hook for this, I'd imagine. Every taxpayer is. And you should be pissed that they even pulled this little stunt off. And that's... I don't know why they think that this is funny. But they do. So in 2020, Stephen Marshall did the right thing, readjusted his cabinet, and then went about this and was like, this all looks bad, and they started to resign and they realised it looked bad. Not Mr. Bell, he was like, we'll keep our spots. Which is super interesting that he attempted it. The Legislative Council President, Terry Stevens, resigned. Vicky Chapman and Rob Lucas will take over the portfolios. Vicky Chapman. Okay. Deputy Premier Vicky Chapman and the Treasurer Rob Lucas will take over their portfolios. That was in 2020. So that's the sort of people that they are. They don't care that this much scandal surrounds what they do. But I think it's important as we're talking about this in relation to bullying within the Liberal Party and how they handle this sort of stuff. They know that they're setting up the ranks like Mr. Bell that was under investigation already for $2 million worth of theft. And then like, run anyway. He runs anyway after stealing money from their party. But then he claims this expense. But then he's like, no, I'm so entitled. I'm going to ask the DPP to put this off and it'll be a political witch hunt if they come after me. Dude, you're so out of touch. It's not even close to what you should have been doing. So, I want to talk about a another issue with the Liberals. I don't know if you're aware, but Senator Kitching is going to be laid to rest tomorrow. And her passing is awful. But it shouldn't be politicised. I don't care which side of the aisle you sit on. The woman needs her respect and her family. For instance, when John Howard passes away, the very first thing I'm not going to do is go, oh, he had an issue with this, that, or the other. I'm going to go, Prime Minister for 10 years, rest in peace kind of thing. Not the Liberal Party. They took an opportunity of a woman's passing and made it their political witch hunt. She's not even in the ground, and they're like, no, I'm just going to lean in on this. But this was a mistake. Not just because they attacked a woman that's not even in the ground yet, but because they have such an on-the-nose reputation in dealing with women in their own party. That I'm going to make them wish they didn't do this. And it's ridiculous that we're even having this conversation. Or, one sec. I need you to know that this is part of what they do. They are a deflecting party that does not have the best interest in the nation. Why? Because if they did, they wouldn't have pulled a stunt like this. It's disgraceful. Even if she was in the ground, which she is, it's not appropriate to do this at any time, in any space, on any platform. But Murdoch has to lean in and go with the mean girls line. And journalists are all too easy to fall for the prey of it. It sells. And then it infects itself onto where we find ourselves now. And I think it's super important to see that this is the type of stuff, right back to Tony Abbott, if they want to claim about the way Labor treats women, I suggest you take a look in your own backyard. Julia Banks, Julie Bishop, and this. What you're looking at is essentially a moment in history where we can easily 1,000,000 to 1 times. So did you haven't even got, the Prime Minister took empathy training. Absorb that. He was so out of touch with rape allegations and whatever else in his party. He thought that he needed empathy training and still didn't learn how to get it right. He was asking Jen for advice. It got so appalling. But it got even a little bit more grimier than that. These sort of tactics need to stop. You want to be a mean girl? Cool. I can be meaner. And I will flip you on your head if you ever decide that this woman's passing was a moment for you. It was not. This is not what you want to be doing. This wasn't smart. It wasn't even remotely politically savvy. A woman was raped in a Liberal Party office. Do you know that they got the cleaners in before they even called her an ambulance or nothing? Nothing came. They've got carpet cleaners in to remove that DNA first. This is the sort of geniuses that we're dealing with. But sure, they want to do a deflection game, I'm in. I'm in, but I'm coming with some weapons of their own freaking history. Do not cross me on this. That woman's family deserves peace. When we pass, we deserve peace in our legacy. This is not the hill you want to die on, because I guarantee you, you think you know nasty until I come. Anthony Albanese should not have to make a statement, but he's going to. Why? Because the media is so hyperbolic about what this is. That's disgraceful. Or nowhere should it be a normal thing that the LNP can set a rhetoric on what bullying looks like. If you want to ask me, they set the record on how they treat women. See, ALP have a quota where they get just as many women in as men. The Liberals won't even touch that. Why am I mad? Because you went too far this time. There's a limit to what I'll tolerate. A woman's death is not your political football. Ever. Ever. But, you want to look at recent comments by the Prime Minister? Scott Morrison declares triumphant that March for Justice rallies were not met with bullets. Mr. Non-bullier, huh? See, when you make an idiot of yourself, it's pretty hard to retract that kind of stupidity. You had no ground. On what part of this did you think it was going to stick? Like, you found that story against Albo. Like, that was a credible thing to do. But worse, you didn't even check your own backyard. My God, this is the most repugnant thing a Liberal has done to a woman. And her family. What you did to Julie Gillard was awful. Awful. But this is a new kind of shit show. And I'm not done playing with you. So, last year, Scott Morrison declared a triumphant for democracy. The campaign is for women. Could rally outside Parliament House in other cities across Australia without being met with bullets. That was kind of a hit at saying we have a democracy. You dumbass. They were fighting so women couldn't get raped in your freaking offices. And you were like, hey, weren't you lucky that we weren't shooting at you? And you think that you got some moral high ground to dare come at Labor? Dude, step back before I make it personal. This is just the start of where I'm going to be. I'm not done with you. Women across this nation are appalled, and the Australian can put out as many headlines as it likes saying that Scott Morrison is fine with women now because he did a Mean Girls thing. No. I'm not going to let the Australian or any other Murdoch entity come after Anthony Albanese over this woman's passing. This isn't going to happen. He told protesters that were protesting against rape they're lucky that they weren't met with bullets. This isn't just repugnant. It screams to its core what an absolute shit show we're in. We're a smart nation. South Australia proves it, and every other state that has shown them we're not going to put up with that crap. Not at all. The way you treat women, I would have sat down and would not said a damn word and kept your photo ops going. They were stupid enough. But now you've made it difficult for me to look the other way. Prime Minister is facing sustained pressure over his government's handling of rape allegations, declined in front of 4,000 strong protesters at the forefront of Parliament House, acknowledged that the push for women's equality was not done yet. So he makes these comments last year on women, gets empathy training, and comes out with, well, weren't they lucky to not be met with bullets? No, you don't get to rewrite history, Scott Morrison. And you don't get to pretend like Labor has an issue with women when this is your party rhetoric. You don't get to have Julie Gillard talk about how she handed over her red shoes so other little girls could join the ranks and stand up to people like you. Your own party called you a complete psychopath. I'm done having the conversation where you find it representing anything for anyone. You don't represent even your own party with comments like this. And if it does, you need to take a look at what your party is telling people. My God, it's repugnant. So, I think women need to tell the Prime Minister, stop it. Stop it. We are not your little play toy for you to be politically advantageous with. We are humans. We are your mothers, your sisters, your wives, your daughters, your aunts, your friends, if you're lucky. But I'll tell you this, you want to pull stupid pranks like that again, I will make you remember every dumb comment that has come out of your dumb mouth on women. Do not use this senator's passing for your shit show. Because I'm not done playing with you. I will not be done playing with you. That woman, Senator Kitching, needs a proper memorial. She needs to be laid to rest in the arms of her loved ones. I'm appalled that I even had to address this issue. I'm appalled that the media got behind that type of messaging. That the media went with, hey, let's do this before the lady is even in the ground. I'm not mad at just the LNP. No. Journalism all over died the second that they took a part in this. It's what they did to Emma Husar and Julie Gillard times 10. This is 10 times more repugnant. I'm appalled, and you should be too. But I digress. I think that we need a better story than this. One that addresses the media's role and what happened next. How much have you heard about the SA win in around the country? If you didn't hear the media hearkening into the whole, yay, it's great someone won, that's because they didn't want you to see it or know that had happened. So here's the deal. This is kind of a News Corp's SA Sol Herald, Sun, Daily Telegraph have been mercilessly mocked for barely covering Labor's stunning landslide victory in South Australia. Both made no mention on their home national pages. Both did not post a story on their social media insiders. That's interesting. That's interesting for so many reasons. But wanna see? Here's how they spoke about it. Oh, hold on. Okay. So here's how the Murdoch media decided to talk about it. This is why this is a headline. They are not a word on the SA election. Hey, this is the Canberra Times. Nothing on South Australia, nothing. It's just a huge promotion for Harvey Norman front and centre. Now that's funny. That's funny. This is a sign. And the thing is, they didn't just do this here. They did this en masse. It gets even funnier. So, here's more of what they did at the Murdoch Empire. So, do you see it? No mention of the South Australia win. Not done. Not done. Then you've got another one. Check out this one. This is what they put up around the country. This is what they're selling. This is, you know, I'm amazed it didn't have Clive Palmer, something. It's all Jerry Harvey. He made headlines. Look, I think that that's huge. And that's a sign Murdoch is pretty scared. He doesn't even want to talk about it. And I think that that's telling. How scared do you got to make a man where he doesn't say a word about an upsetting loss of a one-term government? I want to stress this. This is like a new low for Murdoch. He's going to be filling a few rainbows of tears today. This is an indication they're not interested in being journalists. Whoever is investing their money in this should end it now. Even Harvey Norman has to know this isn't news. They're no longer advertising in a newspaper. They're just, this is like an IPA wish list where you just don't mention anything bad that happens to the Liberals. And you put Harvey Norman on the cover and then you say, hurrah, we told you the news. That's what happened here. I mean, around the country, this is what the headlines were. The online presence was equally as terrible. They didn't just do this on papers. They hit it on the online presence too. Nowhere did it make media headlines that South Australia had won. Labor had won in South Australia. That's weird, right? It has to be weird that he was this butthurt that he thought, not only will I not tell you who won, but I'm going to tell you what Jerry Harvey is selling. Okay, dude, that's weird. It's, I don't know. I want to say that this is like par for the course, but even for Rupert Murdoch, this is a new low. To not go, hey, great win for the Labor Party in South Australia. Nothing. There's a picture circulating of Peter Credlin's face. She looked like she ate a wet sausage roll. It's just wrong. I think that they are pretty upset today. There's every indication that they are pretty upset today. This is around the country. They don't have their crap together on this stuff. So if they win federally, right? If Labor win federally, will we see headlines like that, where it's just an advertisement and no outlining moment of showing you who actually won? Will Rupert Murdoch sit back and go, haha, don't want to mention that part? I think that's going to be, I think it's really telling that he did it. And here's the thing. The mastheads don't need to have that direct messaging from Rupert Murdoch. That's not how this works. The mastheads know what Rupert Murdoch is after. They just know. There isn't like this direct phone call that says, hey, don't mention this. It's already assumed knowledge that Rupert Murdoch doesn't want to see this in the headlines. So if you're thinking that Rupert Murdoch rung these individually and got this message out there, no. He sets a culture that makes it mirrored to his own liking. And here's how he did it. He went with, I don't tell my mastheads what went horribly wrong. I showed them that they didn't need to talk about the win. See, if they don't talk about the win, if, say, Albo gets in federally, if they don't talk about that win, that's more of a sign that Rupert Murdoch isn't just partisan, but he's also afraid of any real news. Which is, it should be telling to you that he's quite afraid of real news. And I find that that's super interesting. Take whatever political stance you want, but if you're afraid of real news, you're not a journalist, are you? Mr. Rupert Murdoch, give up your interest in news. Because that's not news, buddy. That's picking and choosing what you talk about. Now, you could take the stance of, talking about the win and talking about how it happened. You could definitely be a journalist in doing this. I have touched on so many different things that I like and I don't like. Why? Because I think it's important. I think it's important that you know where I sit. I've never hidden that I'm left-leaning. I've never hidden that I want a Labor government. I've never hidden any of that. But here's the deal. You do. And you did it in a mass buy-up in newspapers. You hid it while you were buying them up. And then you closed down hundreds of local journalists. And fed the media your bullcrap. If it weren't for social media, we would be in a lot of damn trouble with you. And I'm really, really upset with how that was handled. So, the next one I want to talk about is Hillsong leader Brian Houston has made a statement. Now, what this means is he does one of these weird apologies and you get this cryptic sort of, well, that shouldn't have happened. like almost as if he knows something went horribly wrong, did nothing to stop it, but now thinks that he should still hold his job, even though he did nothing to stop it. That's how this whole thing has played out. But remember, this is the guy who Scott Morrison helped get out of the country and avoid any overlook on doing this. These are Scott Morrison's buddies. Now, if Labor had a buddy like this, you wouldn't hear the end of it. But this is who they're friends with. They make friends with very inappropriate people, and they think the papers wouldn't dare touch this. This is The Guardian, not a headline anywhere else. That will even mention where the Prime Minister is on this. He stepped down as a leader of the church, breached his code of conduct. He's been forced to apologise unreservedly after the church founder Brian Houston was found to have engaged in conduct of serious concern by the church. Following the media reports, the church global board said in a statement, Houston had breached Hillsong's pastor code of conduct in 2 incidents in the past decade. We have sadly been dealing with 2 complaints made against the pastor Brian Houston over 10 years in the church global board. The board said that the first incident occurred approximately a decade ago, which inappropriate text messages from Houston were sent to a staff member, which resulted in the employee resigning. Not him, the employee, which is how the LNP operate. It's so gross. That is so incredibly gross. This is their fine upstanding citizens. Look, stuff like this happens in workplaces and whatever across the nation. But it seems to me the most troubling aspect is that the victim resigns. That's super troubling, and it should be for many, many of us. At the time, the pastor Brian Houston was under the influence of sleeping tablets. Excuse made, upon which he had developed dependence, and said for Brian to ensure he received professional help to eliminate his dependency on the medication, and was achieved successfully. So now we know he had a drug problem, like a lot of people in this nation. I don't begrudge the man, but why do you have to hold his position while all that went on? And why was this woman the one that resigned? Second investigation concerned a complaint that they received in 2019 about a behaviour in which Hillsong attributed to medication and alcohol. Following an in-depth investigation, it was found out that the pastor Brian Houston had become disorientated after a session at Hillsong conference following the consumption of anti-anxiety medication beyond the prescribed dose mixed with alcohol. The global board statement said it resulted in him knocking on the door of a hotel room that was not his and entering this room, spending time with a female occupant. Yeah, none of this is normal. This is Scott Morrison's buddy. The Hillsong Global Board said whatever the circumstances at the time, this person did not deserve to be placed in the situation and found herself in by the pastor. The investigation by the Integrity Union, appointed by the Global Serious Concern, said we apologise unreservedly affected by Brian Houston's actions and commit to being available for any further assistance we can provide. So, George Pell resigned from doing this, from having moments of inappropriateness. We have Bill Gothard of the IBLP, Institute of Basic Life Principles. And these are all people that have links to political figures all around the world. This is a problem. These leaders talk about this whole, how the world is ungodly and whatever else, and they have conduct like this. You can't clean this off it. I think that this is going to haunt a lot of these leaders if they keep attaching themselves to these weird religious leaders who are obsessed with sex. You can't tell me that they're not obsessed. They become, in the granular sense, very ingrained in what you do in your own sex life. What you do with your own body and how it's presented. What you wear, who you talk to, and they do this cultish thing where you got to bring in people and you're not really to socialize with people that aren't part of it. I'm deeply disturbed by this sort of behavior. Hillsong said that the investigations were conducted by either board members or a body appointed by the global board to hear and resolve the complaints against pastors and advisors. Hillsong in Houston remains on a period of leave in the investigation of the second incident. He agreed to take specific action, including stepping down from the leadership for a period. In other words, they want it to go away quietly, and then they'll put him back. Remember, he also covered up sexual abuse that his dad was doing. That's where we're at. I'm really, really disturbed by all of that. I want to now talk about really, really, really messed up logo. I don't know how many of you caught this story, but I couldn't help myself. There was a moment where I thought, of course they did. Then it turned into this screams the young liberals. Then I thought about it a bit more and I thought, no, this is deliberate. This was designed to put people off. This is just how they do now. Okay. Check it out. This is funny stuff. So, the PM signed off on this just to know how he did this little shit show. Yeah. So the PM department drops widely mocked something, a logo that looks like a penis. I don't really enjoy these sorts of moments where you point out exactly what this looks like. And then you got this part. And you're like, and the PM was like, yeah, I'll sign that. I don't know what that looks like. Did you look in your pants this morning, Prime Minister? Okay, a Women's Network logo was wildly mocked and withdrawn by the Prime Minister's department. Now, if he didn't sign off on it, why is he able to remove it? See, when you make up a story, it's hard to keep track. It becomes an issue. Mr. Prime Minister, you are an issue. Okay, the Department for the Prime Minister and the Cabinet issued a statement on Tuesday, so the logo had been removed from its website pending consultation with staff. The logo considered a cursive W with a doomed pubescence, which women groups and social media users complained resembled male genitalia. Critics included the National Older Women's Network, which described it as an earlier thoughtlessness or an insult. Of course it was. Okay. So, rather than taking their word, I really thought this, I like this. I really thought this logo for Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet of Women's Network was fake, but what do they know? The department said that the logo was a result of a 2019 rebrand of staff diversity networks to establish consistent work field with the insignia groups, including Women Network. You wonder, did they walk around with this logo on? And they're like, this sounds like a solid idea. Let's go with that one. That guy's a winner. That kind of rolls into why I think this is always such a bad idea for the Prime Minister to walk around and pretend like he signs off on everything. Someone, if he did clear this, that's weird. And it's even weirder at how quick they're like, this looks bad. This is one of many times that he's done stuff like this. The women's logo retained a W icon, which staff had been using for a number of years. The rebrand was completed intentionally using the existing resources, and designs were consulted widely. No external providers engaged for this work. In other words, they didn't ask anyone from outside. They were like, this is funny as is. Okay. If they didn't ask for any outside help on this logo, which, just so we're clear, does look like a penis, you can't hide from this. This is exactly what it is. The Morrison government has come under fire for attending on women issues since early 2021, and a historical allegation of sexual assault against the Attorney General, Christian Porter, was revealed, which he denied. This month, a prominent women, including former Australian of the Year Grace Tame and former Liberal staff Brittany Higgins, launched a fresh call for Morrison government to implement significant policies to protect women and children from violence, harassment and discrimination. Which brings me back to what I said earlier in the program. This isn't a one misstep. They've got so many missteps with women that it would be hard for them to run on this Mean Girls story. They've just got too many skeletons there. And it's too easy to remind them that they have it. It's incredible that they get away with doing this. I don't know how they've done it. In February, Scott Morrison, along with other political leaders, apologised for the terrible things that happened in Parliament. No, they didn't. They did a private little thing where the victims were excluded and not in front of anyone, really. The Prime Minister's apology, a landmark review of the Australian Discrimination Commissioner, Katie Jenkins, who in 2021 in Federal Parliament's culture. I think that this is just another sign that they don't have a clue with what they're doing. They don't have a brand. They don't have an idea. They have essentially this overarching, just look at Labor. And that's a mistake. It's a political mistake and a suicide to throw rocks while you're in a glass house. Not just with women, not just with... there's also this weird thing where Scott Morrison was trying to attack Anthony Albanese with his recent fitness look. And saying that because Anthony Albanese, after a divorce, took time to get himself healthy. Does he know how bad that looks? Does the Prime Minister actually think about what comes out of his mouth? Anthony Albanese got a divorce and did what most divorcees do. They work on themselves so they can build into a better relationship to be with the next person. And Scott Morrison turned that into, well, he mustn't know himself. Right, I'm going to go with Mr. Photo Op guy. You don't know yourself. And you thought it'd be funny. I will show you. Okay. So, here's where we're at with the Prime Minister. Right? Here's how he's behaved. You want to see what this looks like in any real sense of the word. He wants to talk about what people look like. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Mr. I Can Weld. I don't think you've just lost a bit of your mind here, buddy. I think you're pretending to be a weirdo. Not a weirdo. You're washing people's hair, you're pretending to weld, shearing sheep, doing flowers. Why are you holding a rocket? At what point were you like, oh, I'm going to hold a rocket? That'll look tough with a hard hat. Why? Look, if you want to claim someone doesn't know who they are, I think that's why you do so many weird photo ops like this shit show. Because you're clearly not comfortable with who you are. If you were, this wouldn't come up at all. At all. There'd be zero people going, huh, Prime Minister seems comfortable with himself. But that's not where we're at. We've got this overwhelming chorus of people going, hey, how about you just do the job that we elected you to do, you weirdo? That's kind of where we're at. The fact that he even thought, this is what I mean. Every time he thinks he's got an attack on Labor, Labor goes, okay, guy, we'll just remind you of your weird fucking history with rockets and pretending to be a welder and mucking around with flowers and washing women's hair. It looks weird. There's no good explanation for this. Why would you pretend to sew or build a doghouse or put up Christmas tree lights, which you did none of it? Or why would you pretend to cook and not use the ingredients that are there? These are all weird things that you did, and you were like, nah, got a good political strategy. I'm going to attack the opposition leader and say, here, I don't know who he doesn't know who he is because now he looks better. Healthier. You made it weird. This is weird. There's no part of this that you should have engaged in. But too late now. This is now your legacy. This is what you have to live in. This is a shit show you created. But don't take my word for it. Take his. These are just a few. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. You kind of forget how much he does this. That he'll set up a weird meal and then go, in the middle of a pandemic, there was some $150 barramundi that he caught. Well, he claimed that it was caught. And he set it up on his table and everything else and thanked the Queensland company which provided him with it. Meanwhile, all the shop shelves were empty. While he's bragging he got this amazing barramundi from Queensland, people were starving. And he's like, good show. You can't make this stuff up. It becomes repugnant at some point. Scott Morrison, member for Capricornium, Michelle Laundry, Poor polymer during New Tank Polyurethane Manufacturing Company in Rockhampton. How many trucks does he need to drive? It's weird. It's weird that we're still doing this with him. It's weird that we baby him into this sense of, hey, yeah, that's normal. He doesn't even do like the standing kissing babies thing. When he was given the opportunity to meet victims, no, he even took that to a whole new level of low, which is weird on a whole new level of weird. It was weird when he took all these weird photos, but the fires, forcing people to shake his hand, and then the floods where he pretended to mop a place, and he really leant in and went, no, I've got my strategy. I'm going to say Albo doesn't know who he is because he looks better now. It's almost like he thinks that we didn't just see what we just saw. That he weirdly washed a woman's hair, pretended to weld, and be super creepy. And that he drove so many trucks with weird hard hats. This week he was arranging flowers. Nobody knows why he was doing any of it. And everyone's like, here's the idea, dude. Do the job you're elected to do. It's weird. And then you were like, I'm going to attack Anthony Albanese. No, you absolute weirdo. That's not even politically great for you. Like, I shouldn't be telling you this, but the photo ops of kissing babies and all that kind of other stuff, it's weird. You make it the most awkward show for anyone watching. I want to say, like, stop. But it's almost too funny. It works to my advantage when you're this stupid. Now, please, Mr. Morrison, I want you to go to a daycare centre. I want you to film yourself with children. Not that I'm a fan of you being around tiny tots. Because they're very brutal at times. It's more because they say things. Or let's try from kindergarten to year 3, where they say the darndest things, and you're like, that kid's a character. Let's try that on for a photo op with school children. Because every other photo op has worked exactly the same way. I'd imagine it's garnering the same idea of, oh my God, he just took another photo being weird. I'm truly speechless at this. But I want to say that I'm amazed. But I'm not anymore. The shock has worn off. But that's me for another week of This Week in Politics. Make sure you hit the like button, share it around, get the message out there. I think I've got something good, and I hope you thought so too. Because without you, there isn't a me. Join me next week when we discuss more of This Week in Politics. I think this will be a fantastic platform as the election ramps up. Make sure that you join me same time, same place next week. Thank you guys. Bye.